If we were undercover agents, our cover would be an actor
and an actress.
That's the type of deception you'll see on Graceland, the new show on the USA Network where undercover agents from the FBI, DEA, and other places live together and try to get by. Here's a clip.
What are you doing?
I'm a teacher. I'm trying to make it on the PGA Tour. Reservist with the 316th Quartermaster Company.
You are now an undercover agent, and your lies are your life.
Graceland, a new original series, premieres Thursday, June 6th at 10 on USA.
You should catch the premiere on Thursday, June 6th at 10/9 Central on USA Network. Until then, check out the link in our description for a 5-minute preview.
Hey, this is Ciderhelm. Before we jump into the questions you guys ask, there are a few things I want to talk about. First and foremost, one of the things I hear most frequently is that people think I've stopped making content, or that I'm only releasing small clips. This isn't the case at all. I'm creating at least 3 major videos every single week, and have been for a couple months. Once a week, a new turning point will go up. These are on the Machinima Realm channel, which covers League of Legends, Minecraft, and a number of other games. This series covers team fights and other big events that determine the outcome of Diamond and Challenger level games. Though we've been releasing these on Mondays, we're planning on putting them out on Fridays from now on, beginning this Friday. Also, usually twice a week, I release a show called Pro Playbacks on Machinima Versus. This show is strictly analysis on the esports scene, with an emphasis on the official tournaments. If you are at all interested in high-end play, I really want you watching this show, and you're likely to enjoy just about everything else on the channel as well. Normally we've released these on Wednesdays and Fridays, but we're actually shifting this based on tournament schedules with the hope of quicker turnaround. This means that our next episodes should be following the All-Star Games this weekend, perhaps as soon as Saturday. Now, some of you don't like Machinima, and I get that, so if you don't want to subscribe to them, I do keep a playlist strictly on these other projects, and I've linked that along with the main channels in the description below. On top of this, I also still stream very frequently. You can find this at twitch.tv/Ciderhelm, and you can usually look up my old games on there too. Related to all this, Logan Rotramel asks, how do you feel your channel is doing? Not as well as I'd like in a perfect world. The fact is I started this year with the aim of doing 2 to 3 videos every week, and I set a schedule where I could realistically achieve this every week. My original goal was to do Don't Feed Champion spotlights and tactical episodes, but with Turning Point and Pro Playbacks, it's much harder to put together big projects on my own channel. Compounding this, I have a really high standard for what I'm willing to put on my channel these days. To give you an example, I recently had a Kha'zix pentakill and quadrakill that were fairly good, but I didn't feel they offered enough of a narrative to deserve a spot on the channel. I want you to associate my channel with quality content, even if I can't make much right now, so you'll at least stick around until my schedule frees up. I want you guys who are subscribed to me to see my content. It's a big problem to me that I'm not effectively communicating these episodes out, and I really need to find a way to get some kind of regular content on here that I can use to notify you guys of my new stuff, as well as hopefully provide something new by itself. It may be possible to get more done with how we're looking at the Pro Playbacks episodes though, particularly with shifting the schedule on those to tournaments rather than set Wednesdays and Fridays. So the bottom line is that the channel isn't where I want it to be, and I'll look at ways to improve it. Changes to how I approach my other shows on other channels may make this possible. Let's jump into the informal Q&A. Alright, so the first big League of Legends question. Do you think that Lissandra or Aatrox will be played competitively? Okay, so first let me jump into Aatrox. I have played him a little bit in the PvE. Today I was actually going to do a mechanics video on Aatrox, and we were going to have that out with this Q&A. And unfortunately, that's not going to happen because, well, 2 things. First one is when we were going to do our testing, they brought PBE down for maintenance. Okay, that's fine. And the second one, this is when I went back on, Zyra and Teemo and maybe more were just completely broken to the extent that I saw a minefield of maybe 30 or 40 mushrooms being placed active. Well, here's what happened. Zyra is able to plant her little saplings. I don't remember what they're called, but you know, the little seeds that can turn into stuff just instantly. Doom, 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 doom. Machine gun place them. And we're seeing like 10, maybe more than 10, maybe 15 out at a time that are turned into little attacky things. So take it for what it is. And then Teemo is just able to infinitely place his mushrooms, just giant minefields of mushrooms. And so he's mana limited, and that's it. So the games are basically unplayable right now. Can't watch anything because Zyra and Teemo are running around just killing everything. So take it for what it is. PBE is not in a good state right now. I can't really figure out much about Aatrox other than his very base mechanics. Tienso no Akuma had a good video on some combos. There's some more to him. He has an attack range. I didn't really test this, but I noticed that he had an attack range of 150, which is an oddball number. I'm not sure who else has an attack range of 150, but it is not common. 175. So most attack ranges for melee are 125. And then some attack ranges are 175. I know Fizz is I believe Fizz is 175. There's a couple. I think Riven is 175. I'm not totally sure on that. Maybe that's only with her Unbroken Sword or whatever. Kha'zix, I believe, with his upgrade is 175. But there aren't a lot of 175s. And then Aatrox is 150, which I thought was an oddball thing. I don't know if that at all relates to his model size, like he's still got a decent attack range or anything, or if it's actually just 150 and it's a little shorter than some other champions. I'm not totally sold on him, but let me just say up front, I'm never really quite sold on melee AD carries. And that doesn't mean they're bad, but it does mean you have to see them in action before you get an idea of how strong they'll be. It's not like if I saw Lux on the PBE right now, I would say, okay, Lux looks like a pretty good champion. If I saw Hecarim or whatever, I'd say, well, Hecarim looks like a pretty good champion. But with an AD carry, you just don't know. You have to see them in the matchups. You have to see how well they're doing. Mechanically, he looks horribly uninteresting, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. I mean, he's got the every third attack. He can either heal himself or deal more damage and damage himself. His passive is just super generic, where he heals himself when he dies. I guess that gives him some actually, that is something nice about Aatrox. It does give him some how to put this. AD carries, the melee range AD carries have a situation where they need to be able to get in, but they don't always, depending on the AD carry, they also need to know when to get out, and it's hard to judge. So like with Tryndamere, you can go invulnerable when you are about to die, right? Fiora, I think with Fiora, you have to know when to get out or when to use your ult to avoid taking that last bit of damage, etc. You really have to go all in and kill. So you've got champions with those kinds of mechanics. Somewhere you can stay in, somewhere you need to back off. And it's always really rough when you do need to back off to really judge when you need to back off. Save your abilities for that. So the passive for Aatrox really does solve that, because it says, okay, you will go invulnerable briefly. You will regenerate this health. So you can stay in until you die. If it's really close and you're not sure you're going to win the engagement, go ahead and stay in, because you're not going to get killed as long as your passive's available. So there's that. I think that's kind of something he has going for him, but I don't know. And then there's kind of sluggishness on his jump. It's not an instant jump. It's not that sluggish, but it's not going to instantly get you away from damage if somebody's on you and they're about to ult you, that kind of thing. So take it for what it is. We don't know. We won't know until we see him in a lot of matchups. With some champions, it's a lot easier to tell whether they'll be strong or not, or whether they'll be weak. With melee champions, it tends to be pretty hard to judge that until you've seen them in action. So, anyway, the question is whether they're going to be played competitively, right? It's not just, I'm just telling you guys about Aatrox at this point, my first impressions of him. But the question is whether it's going to be played competitively, which is a whole different question. So first off, the answer is both Lissandra and Aatrox will 100% for sure be played competitively. That means in high-end solo queue games. It's going to be in ranked matches. Oh, like, same thing, right? It's going to be in tournaments. You will see them played. But that's only because you see most of these champions played anyway. What you want to know, what I'm assuming your question is, will they be played successfully at a competitive level? So in solo queue, generally almost any champion is going to be able to be successful at a very high level. In tournaments, not always the case. Lissandra, I feel like she has a lot of potential. She has a lot of crowd controls. It's hard to judge exactly how strong she's going to be. She's kind of like Cassiopeia in the sense that she does, her main form of harassment is reliant on a skill shot. She's kind of like Cassiopeia in that she must be close range, but she still has that gap closer. She still has that escape. She's not quite as strong in constant damage as Cassiopeia, the example I'm giving. And I'm giving Cassiopeia because Cassiopeia is not all that frequently seen at tournament play. Was a long time ago, but not as frequently these days. So the short range is really what's getting it for me. But you've also got a champion like Kha'zix, and Kha'zix is played competitively frequently and successfully. I don't know. I don't know where Lissandra is going to fall in. You know, these pro players, they usually come out and they surprise us. They'll pick something unusual, they'll bring it out, they'll have it as part of a strategy, they'll bring it out and surprise us. Lissandra does fit that mold, where she's going to be able to bring a lot to an engagement with her ultimate, with her ability to snare. Not so much with her slows. The slows are dime a dozen right now, but I do think we're going to see her potentially be game-changing, but I think she'll still be niche. I could be wrong. We'll see. Aatrox, again, just nebulous. We have no idea what's going to happen with Aatrox. I don't think anybody can tell you right now how he's going to do. I think if you were to ask a first impression, you'd say maybe not so strong. But again, it comes down to how well he matches up against players, how many players can kite him, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so let's jump to the next question. All right, so the next question, what do you think about the new jungler timers in patch 3.8? Okay, so I just went on the PBE after the most recent update. I wanted to make sure I was up to date on this, so here's what I just saw. Everything spawns at 155. We kind of knew that was coming. How to start with this question. I want to talk about more than just that as far as junglers go, but let's go ahead and start with that. Bot lane had an enormous combo, and when you have 2 versus 2 bot, not an enormous advantage, I should say. When you had 2 versus 2 bot, meaning support AD carry versus support AD carry, blue side had this huge advantage picking up the double golem because you get that level so much earlier than your opponents. And when you're going in like a solo queue game, you're not always going to get your support. If you're on purple team, you're not always going to easily communicate to your support or to your jungler that you need to go pick up the 3 wolves to counter that. And even so, the double golem is just better. It's always in a convenient location, etc. But for the start of the game, it gives you an advantage, no question about it. Here's the thing. Now, what I will say for practically speaking here, double golem exists on both sides of the map. The map is obviously symmetrical, and in a lot of games, especially team games, especially when you're looking at tournament play, you don't send a support and an AD carry bot versus support and an AD carry bot. What a lot of teams are doing right now is you're sending a support and AD carry for blue team bot, support AD carry for purple team top. And so they're getting that same advantage, and they're both essentially competing to take down the tower as fast as possible against a solo laner. And then there's going to be all the strategy involved in there. But that's very, very common right now in the pro scene to see that happening. And it's a bit less common to see a support and AD carry versus support and AD carry a bot lane. But the fact is, if you're playing solo queue, it's not being communicated. Teams are not setting up around that. Teams are not ready to, solo... Like, people aren't playing the Nasus or the Renekton or the Rumble or the Singed or the Shen or, whoever, so they can go against 2 opponents in bot lane by themselves and stay alive. So it's really a big problem for solo queue games and duo queue games because the teams cannot coordinate to split off and not just do what has become the standard meta. So that decision is largely a reflection of the meta. It's a very practical decision. There's nothing bad about it. Riot caving into the meta or whatever, they're designing their game around it. It's not that big of a deal. In a perfect world that people would be able to communicate, it wouldn't be a necessary decision. All that said, it's still a huge advantage. Having that, being able to do that is still a huge advantage. I think it was probably a necessary nerf. Okay, that said, let's jump off of the timers and jump into the other cool stuff about the jungle. And I think some of you probably already know this when I just did a clear on Nunu, and the cool things about the jungle right now, you kill blue golem, you get level 2. Okay, that's that's standard, right? You kill Blue Golem, you get level 2. If you kill Red Lizard afterward, you get level 3. So you get to level 3, and for a lot of junglers, that's enough for you to go in and gank off doing just the blue and the red. Okay, now here's the cooler thing. You do 1 full clear of the jungle and you hit level 4. That means you start Blue Golem, 3 Wolves, 4 Wraith, Red Lizard, double Golem, and you are level 4. That is not currently the case. That will be the case. At least where it is right now. So that's also really cool. It makes it a whole lot easier for a lot of junglers just to get through there quickly, then get to the lanes and start ganking, doing whatever, or, keep clearing, doing whatever. Okay, and there's one more cool thing. Wriggles. Wriggles Lantern, Madred's Razor, same thing, except Wriggles is stronger. 60 passive damage on every attack for the Madred's Razors, and then I think it's 100 for the Wriggles Lantern. That's also a big buff for junglers, in the sense of previously your Wriggles Lantern was a random proc. If you were not lucky with that, you could go without getting the procs from it, and it's essentially a wasted item. I mean, it's not a wasted item, but you get what I'm saying. It's really nice to have the standard, consistent amount of damage on every single attack. Now, junglers already benefit a lot from having attack speed. It's a good idea to have attack speed for most junglers, but this makes it even better. This makes it more consistently. Having more attack speed, you will clear that jungle faster. It will be better. So that's something to keep in mind. There are some junglers who inherently want to build attack speed for their champion anyway, so that's something to keep in mind. But overall, the jungle is going to be improved, especially for players who are, find it daunting to get into the jungle in the first place. That first clear getting you to level 4 is really nice, and not having to come up with convoluted clearing strategies or, getting into a lane too quickly, etc. It's nice. So that's my opinion on that. All right, so the question is, what is your favorite lane? Right now, I'd say it's... Okay, so actually this is a complicated answer. For the last year, mid lane has really been my favorite lane, and I've been primarily playing AP caster champions, with the exception of Jace, who's a long standby, and Kha'zix, who I've recently picked up. But I've primarily been playing AP caster champions. Okay, so you would say that, except that now I've started to really spend a lot of time looking at, well, what can we do at bottom lane in a duo combo? But originally I used to play AD carry bottom lane, so AD carry support standard bottom lane. Originally that's what I did, now not so much. Now I'm looking at ways to play the AP carries that I really enjoy, like Cassiopeia, Fizz, and I'm looking at ways to play them at bottom lane instead. And ways to imbalance games to make kill lanes that are basically death traps for opponents. Stronger than a lot of the kill lanes we've seen other people using. So, yeah, I'd say bot lane probably my favorite lane in terms of all the things we're doing. Cassiopeia and Soraka is extraordinarily strong. Very high win rate with that. Same with Fizz and Leona. I think there's a couple more on the horizon we're looking at that might work. But yeah, those are the ones I'd say are the strongest. And beyond that, I can go tangential. Well, I've answered your question, so I'm going to go on a tangent here. Kha'zix. I really enjoy Kha'zix. And I played him for a grand total of 1 day, where I just played him nonstop, and I was like, this is the best champion ever. I'm picking up so many kills. I'm carrying these games so hard. And then I decided the next day, after only 1 day of playing him, I'm going to play this guy in ranked. So I was in my promo matches, or I was near promo or whatever for Gold 3. And I lost 6 games in a row with Kha'zix, and I was actually knocked out of Gold 2 back into Gold... I'm sorry. I'm going in reverse order. I'm knocked back into Gold 5 from Gold 4. And so I got destroyed. And really what it came down to was not just that I hadn't practiced him, and some of these games were really lopsided. Like a couple of the games we were going to lose no matter what, and there wasn't much of a chance to carry it. But honestly, there were 4 games where I could have carried the games. And what I was doing, the mistake I was making, and I'll just be upfront, like, okay, we had some problems in those games, but I lost those games when I could have won those games. Even if my teammates weren't pulling their weight, even if we were, uneven or something, I am the reason we didn't win those games, because I know if I had played better, I could have won those games. So it's about 4 of those matches. And what it comes down to is I was not effectively judging what I could get away with in the late game, because you can't lose someone. Essentially, you can't lose someone in the end of the mid game or the early late game, or things will snowball out of control quickly if the enemy team knows what they're doing. So you can't just make a mistake, go and get yourself killed, and, if you're already down 2 towers in mid lane for something, chances are, 40 minutes in, your game is over if somebody, especially somebody who can carry your team, who is doing most of the damage, gets killed. So what I was doing is I was just making these mistakes on judging when I could get in. I got the idea, okay, I can get in, I can kill this person, and then I'll have a reset, and then I can get out. Well, okay, but if they have 3 forms of crowd control that they can focus on me immediately, and they're good enough to do it, one of the other problems is, frankly, when I go into ranked, I play against much more difficult opponents than the people I play with in normals. A lot of that is because I do a lot of fan games when I do normals, and I play a lot of normals. I really like playing fan games, but I don't get an accurate idea when I'm playing normal games of, okay, when I'm playing a new champion, I don't really get an idea of if a team is focused, what can I get away with? So that was a terrible idea. Never play a champion you've only played for 1 day in ranked. Never play a new champion in ranked either. In fact, just be good in ranked. Carry me when you're in games with me. Now that we're done with that tangent, who do you think is the best late game carry? Is it worth it to master Ezreal and Ashe, or are they a bad choice? Okay, I feel like... Okay, first off, the best AD carry in terms of damage you're going to be looking at... I have a piece of fluff in the air here. In terms of damage, you're going to be looking at Tristana. You're going to be looking at Kog'Maw. If you can get in close, you're also looking at a champion like Vayne. Vayne, I think, is a little better in solo queue than in coordinated team games, but she still has a place in coordinated team games. Okay, so those are in terms of damage, but a lot of champions bring a lot of extra utility. You've got somebody like Varus with his ultimate, Ashe with her ultimate, Varus with his shredding, Ezreal with his ability to build anything he wants and be fine with it. Like blue build Ezreal right now is working because he has so much utility that he's bringing with his ability to kite, his ability to constantly lay down damage, never let up on it, his long range poke, etc., etc., etc. Blue build Ezreal is an example of, okay, this carry is not Kog'Maw in terms of damage. This carry is not Tristana in terms of late game damage. But so what? They're still bringing a lot to the game. So much so that he's being picked over these other champions. So it's just something to keep in mind. Caitlyn obviously is a very strong champion, even after the nerf, just an extraordinarily strong champion for especially early game pressure, but also late game pressure, and also just generally is a decent AD carry, especially if you can get in a brush or get in brush and attack from there. But anyway, just her ability to get damage on towers, especially with a champion like Janna, push towers early and then snowball that out potentially to a victory in matches is astounding. Most of the AD carries are pretty good. I would say the same thing about Ashe that I've said probably a dozen times up to this point in streams, and I think Q&As maybe as well. Proportionately speaking, there are a lot more champions that are a lot more popular that all have gap closers now as compared to when Ashe was released. Ashe is an amazing kiter, but kiting is not always as effective as it used to be because there are so many champions with gap closers and crowd controls. She still has a place. She is still worth learning, but it can be frustrating to play her when you've got somebody, say in another lane, maybe your lane, whatever, with a gap closer, with a lot of damage, who's already gotten fed, and you're not able to go toe-to-toe with them because that's going to... You can't do anything about it at some point. Not that big of a thing. She's still a good champion. Learn her. But she's not as strong, in my opinion, as she used to be, relatively speaking, to the league. Okay. What are your thoughts about the upcoming All-Star matches? Which region do you think is going to win and why? I don't know who's going to win. I honestly don't, but I would be very pleasantly surprised if North America or the European Union managed to win. The impression I get, and please feel free to tell me I'm wrong, this is merely an impression, it's a discussion I had a couple years ago. My impression of the pro scene is basically North America tends to be more individual oriented. You will see players making plays that are really about them making the plays, and they're not coordinated team plays. And sometimes that costs games, sometimes that wins games. But that's my impression of North America. You're more likely to see that. That doesn't mean you constantly see it. And I think that's been changing a bit too. I think you've seen more group strategies recently. The European scene, I think, has been more about the group for longer, and I think that's a good thing. I think the European scene for a long time has had an edge over the North American scene, and I think the Asian scene is just going to kick everybody's ass. No, I think that they are extraordinarily good. From some of the gameplay I've seen, just extraordinarily good players. There's some play. I saw Lee Sin. I don't remember who the Lee Sin was. It's probably a name that I can't pronounce and don't remember, and I couldn't write it down if I needed to. But I saw Lee Sin, who is from the Asian scene, and some of the plays he pulled off. This is on Reddit. Some of you guys may have seen the same thing. Some of the plays he pulled off, I have never ever seen North American or European players pull off anything as complex as this. It was just absurd. It was amazing too. So there's that. I saw the same thing. I don't know if you guys saw the LeBlanc stuff too. Kind of the same thing with like, okay, this LeBlanc has just carried a tournament game so hard. And LeBlanc is not exactly a popular pick, but if you're that good, LeBlanc can make a lot of difference in a game. So I don't know. It's cultural. I do think North America and the European Union have a chance, and I hope they win. But I won't be surprised if they don't. I'll just be very happy if they do. So I hope that answers that. What do you think is better on AD carries, Lifesteal or attack damage Quince? And yes, I know you're not an AD player, but why not ask anyways? Lifesteal is really a fantastic choice if you're going to hit fine. Last hit minions fine without the extra AD. It really is good, especially if you're going to get that Vampiric Scepter. You're going to get up to, I think it's like 21% you can get really early as far as Lifesteal. Plus, if you have a Doran's Blade because you have somebody who could sustain you in lane, if you took some harass, all that combined. Boy, Lifesteal really is the way to go in those situations. And here's what I would say. If you can last hit fine, you can recover from so much more with Lifesteal. Just a little bit. And once you get that, first Vampiric Scepter, I have seen games frequently turn, those first tower objectives. I'm watching games where one person has to go back and the other person, somebody just tried to gank an AD carry, right? So both lanes wind up having to go back, or maybe somebody's dead or whatever. But the AD carry, one of them is really low on health, but they're running that lifesteal. They just stay in the lane, and they push to the tower. They get damage on the tower. They deny experience to their opponent. And by the time their opponent finally gets back to lane, the person who had the lifesteal is at or near full health, and they've got an advantage in the lane, and that's actually just such a huge thing. So it's something to... I've become kind of an advocate for putting lifesteal, going with a lifesteal build for an AD carry. But again, are you going to miss last hits because you're doing less damage? It's all about where you are in terms of your own personal skills in the game. What are your thoughts on Galio and Swain? I know you've played Galio, but I was wondering if you think he's gotten weaker with the new people. Now Galio is still a fantastic champion, but he's a very utility-oriented champion. He doesn't have a gap closer. He is a really good... Galio is someone who counters champions individually, and he can be really good in lane. I think Galio and Swain both get countered very easily. Just fantastically easy. If somebody picks Galio and then somebody else picks like an Udyr or a Hecarim or something, then you're kind of screwed if you're playing Galio because your ult is never going to be effective, that kind of thing. Swain, kind of the same thing. If you're gonna pick it and then somebody's gonna pick a Cassiopeia against you or somebody with healing reduction against you, well, you're kind of screwed. So what I would say is Galio and Swain are both good champions. Swain is a bigger threat than Galio, and Swain is a better choice as a late pick. I don't think you too frequently want to pick him early because you don't want people to pick champions who have easy healing reductions, among other things, or easy sustained harassment against you. But I think... I don't know. I feel like I don't see Galio as much as he deserves to be played. Take it for what it is. I like Galio. He's not a bad champion. It's kind of like Morgana. He's just like a champion that is strong, but you don't see him all that frequently. What do you think about the new map? Will it be unpopular after 2 months like Twisted Treeline or Dominion? I don't know. I think the new map is not going to cost them a lot to make, which is a good thing. I think it'll just be a very simple thing. I think it won't be hard on their servers. I think that it will allow for some fun tournament. We're talking about the 1v1, the magma chamber. I don't know what it's actually called for anybody who doesn't know, but you could look it up, the 1v1 map. I don't know. It's kind of silly. I'm not going to be doing it. I don't care about measuring my skills up personally against somebody else. I don't. I'm not sure how many people will, because it's not the kind of game like, if you go into an MMO, let's say you were playing World of Warcraft, well, you have 9, essentially the equivalent of champions, right? They're incredibly complex. Okay, so you want to put 1v1 in there and do a duel or something? Okay, then that's actually going to be interesting, because you're talking about like 40 different abilities. But what League of Legends, the complexity is in all the different types of champions, all the different things. The complexity is more horizontal across the champion selection rather than vertical across the champion itself. I don't really care about 1v1 skills. I do care about 5v5 skills. I hope that makes some sense, but who am I kidding? I think a lot of people will play it. I don't, here's what I think. A lot of people will play it, and even if I'm wrong about that, Riot didn't invest so much into it that it's a big problem. Plus, they can use it for stuff like these tournaments where they're doing, you know, best whoever world. I only saw their little ad thing about it. I have no idea what they're actually running for the All-Stars. I guess I'll take a look at that. Okay, so let's jump into some non-League of Legends questions just real quick. What capture and editing programs do you use? I use XSplit. I use LiveGamer from Avermedia, LiveGamer HD capture card. That's for capturing. I use Fraps. I've used Fraps. I don't use it all that often anymore. I've used DxTory. I never use DxTory anymore. I would prefer just to use XSplit for most of that. And then for editing programs, Adobe Premiere Pro, Adobe Photoshop, and Adobe After Effects Premiere only. Do I use any other editing programs? Not really. So that's what I use for pretty much everything I do. Do you feel that game devs would be better off making their MMOs start out with a free-to-play model or pay-to-play model? Also, which free-to-play models do you like the best? Okay. So here's my opinion. It's been my opinion for a long time. I think free-to-play models will royally screw you in terms of cost, in terms of getting you to pay way more than something is worth. But as contradictory as this may seem, I also think free-to-play is also a much more honest system, and I have come to despise the subscription system for anything. Anything that I am not constantly using and I am not easily able to cancel. And here's one thing. I remember reading, I think it was a year ago, maybe it was a couple years ago, and I don't know what the situation now, but this is really, in my mind, really scummy. I read that AOL, America Online, some of you are going to be amazingly, probably a lot of you watching this, are too young to know what America Online is. I'm old, I get that, to like seriously know what it used to be. But for those of you that do, I read that they are still getting enormous amounts of revenue, primarily off of elderly people. People who, frankly, do not know how much they've been ripped off because they all have subscriptions that have been running for over a decade, and just money that AOL is not providing anything for. Yeah, I think subscriptions, as a whole, I think subscriptions are a little worse than free-to-play or anything like that. Kind of how I feel about my Xbox, my Xbox subscription. I feel like I should not be paying for gold for some of the stuff I'm getting on it. On the other hand, I enjoy it well enough. Well, actually, I haven't paid for it in a while. I haven't actually played my Xbox in a while, not since Halo. Was it Halo 4? That's what it's called, right? With the, yeah, that was a good game. Really was. But, tangent, okay. Do you believe that gaming as a whole will move to console and tablet use as opposed to PC games in the next 5 to 10 years with the existence of the cloud and the push to get mobile gaming into the foray of homeowners? The cloud, the nebulous cloud, what does that mean? Doesn't mean anything. The push to get mobile gaming into the foray of homeowners. Okay, so my phone, I love my phone. I've got the S3. Maybe I will get an S4 or whatever as soon as I can. the games I play on my phone are not the same games that I play on my computer, period. They're not the same types of games. Now, the games I play on my tablet are a little closer to the kinds of games I'll play on my computer. For instance, I was just talking about Leviathan Warships. I'd be happy to play Leviathan Warships on my tablet just as soon as they fix a UI on it. But I prefer it on PC just because on the PC the UI actually functions. Okay, so I'm just giving you kind of anecdotal things here. I like every platform that is out there. I like consoles. I've had an Xbox forever. I like tablets. I've had a tablet. I'm using a tablet right next to me. I like smartphones, etc., etc., etc. I like PCs too. PCs are a different type of platform. All of these new platforms, I don't think they're going to replace the desktop or PC. I do not think it will happen. But let me clarify that and say I think something needs to replace the desktop PC, possibly. I think there is room for improvement in what... Okay, so here's the thing. You cannot use a tablet to do anything that I do, say, productively. I cannot do all the video editing I'm doing in any coherent, effective way if I'm using a tablet. The PC is designed for that. A lot of games are not going to translate well to a tablet. They're not until there's a better interface for a tablet. I also don't think that these things are going to replace it. I think there's just probably room for some innovation. Final question. Also, did you have a ton of hair at any point? Because I want to see a picture. Nope. Not since I was really young. I have not had long hair at any point since I was probably at least 13 or 14. At most 13 or 14. Well, thank you all for watching. I really do appreciate it. Again, check out the other videos. Obviously, if you don't own the ebook and you're new to League of Legends, www.learntheleague.com. I recommend it. Have an awesome day, awesome evening, awesome afternoon, and goodbye.